Okay, effective communication. So a comment came in from the YouTube comment box just a couple days back. Could you make a video on how you are able to articulate your thoughts, ideas, and solutions really well? You seem to be really good at this. I'll just start this off with a quote that comes from Marcus Tullius Cicero. He's one of the great orators back in ancient Rome. Back in ancient Rome, there was a certain social structure where basically you couldn't be in charge unless you were a military general or you won a war. You did something great to get the respect and honor of the people around you. Cicero was different. Cicero was unique because he actually earned his power through the power of his voice alone, which is really, really cool that someone could do that in that time period, but that's what made him so unique, and he's kind of known for his speaking devices. But something that he originally said was to appeal first to the emotions before appealing to logic. And there really is the thumbscrew behind my technique about how I think about communication. The importance of communication is paramount. If you were to ask Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors, in fact, the greatest investor of our generation, perhaps of all time, what is the number one thing you can go and invest in? Most likely, he's not going to tell you something which has something to do with a stock, an equity, a particular asset. Probably if you want to get actual investing advice, he's going to tell you to just invest in the S&P 500 since it beats out most of the equity funds anyways. He is going to tell you to go and invest in your own speaking ability to be able to communicate effectively. This is so paramount. You have all this value inside of your head. You have all this knowledge that is just waiting to come out. Take your age, multiply it by the number of days that are in a year. That's how many days you've been alive. That's how many days you've had to actually go and experience reality. I implore you, your brain is amazingly good at remembering information. It has a huge database of information that is begging to get out there, and if you can't communicate well, then that information is never going to be shared out into the world, especially by people who need it most. It's very, very easy to discount the information that's inside of your head simply because you've been living with it. In fact, what someone else values a lot more, you may not value so much just because you live with that information inside of your head. Let's get to the topic you're most interested in, is how to effectively articulate these thoughts. The first thing is to understand that you are talking with a human being. You are not talking with a machine, you're not talking with a robot, you're talking with a human with real desires, with real fears, with real anxieties, with real strengths, things that they're proud of, real memories, real experiences. There's real passion in all these human beings, and you have to understand that you're not speaking to a piece of paper with with pencil writing on it, or you're not speaking to a computer in the form of a code. You're not speaking to silicon or carbon. You're speaking to carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and everything else that goes inside of your body, because that's what we're made of. So when I think about articulating ideas, I think about I am speaking to a human being. I am speaking to a human being right now when I'm thinking about answering this question about how to articulate effectively, which means I have to take into consideration emotions. What are the emotions that are associated with the ideas I'm sharing? What is the emotional background of that person? What is the cultural background of that person? A lot of people write off emotional intelligence as being one of these topics that's just, how would you say, it's a little bit too soft. It's not worth money, it's not worth value, it's not worth investing in. You want to think about hard things like technical skills, hard things to go get done. When you're dealing with people, when you want to scale your efforts out to an organization, to a large enough organization to be able to scale out your ideas, your business processes, and your products, you have to know how to inspire, to motivate, and to teach others so that they can run those processes for you. So it's paramount that you know effective communication, and it's paramount that you understand emotional intelligence, because you're going to be dealing with just human beings. Maybe you've taken on the path of being an exceptional leader in your life for the people around you. Other people haven't. A lot of people aspire to great wealth. Some people aspire just to be acknowledged for their work and to be appreciated for what they go and bring to the table. So we got to keep that in mind. To wrap up that quick point is you have to keep in mind that you are talking to a human being. You're talking to a human being with real emotions, with real desires, with real everything behind it. Second, when I think about articulating a point, I start to think about what is the main idea. The more you can actually look at reality in terms of the fabric of reality, the underlying pieces of what puts reality together, you can start thinking about how to go construct ideas. The same way that compounds, if you think about any drug or any sort of chemical in your body or any sort of organic compound, or even table salt. Table salt is simply the combination of the same way that every other compound in your body or organically is a combination of something. It's a combination of multiple elements. They took the most axiomatic, unbreakable pieces, and they were able to separate them down to those pieces. You can't break sodium down into its little pieces without, subatomically like deconstructing it, which takes a lot of energy. You get to break it down to sodium, and that's as far as you get to go. Same thing with chloride. You get to break it down: chloride, sodium chloride, table salt, down to chloride, and you don't get to go any further than that without bringing in other chemical instruments. But these are the same elements that we are made of. We are made of these elements, and guess what? Our ideas are made up of these elements as well. So for example, if I want to go communicate the answer to a question, someone wants to get funding for their business, I want to start to think about what compels someone to offer a lump of cash from where they are into the pocket of someone else. Well, there's a couple of things. I can think about the fundamentals of funding someone in the first place. It's going to come down to how much capital are they offering, for how long are they offering that capital, for what cost are they going to be receiving that capital return. Every sort of investment is going to have a return on investment, whether in the form of interest rate or ownership, equity, or control of a business, which you want to think about, how much does that capital buy you? And you want to be thinking about risk. What is the risk profile in terms of, if I actually go and give that money to someone else, are they going to lose out on that, or am I going to lose out on that investment because I offered to the wrong person? The risk profile was too high, and how do I go balance that? The way I look at the world is I look at down to the elemental level. I want to go down the fundamental, basic level of how reality is constructed. So I want to understand how the world is put together. Whenever I learn something new, I want to go down to the basics of what makes it what it is. I just gave you an example with funding. When it comes to motivating and inspiring people, I want to think about, on a biological level, what gets someone up out of their bed and actually get to work in the morning and be excited to do so? Well, we want to think about emotions again. We want to think about the fundamentals of what makes a human actually move. Humans are motivated by certain emotions, instincts. Humans are motivated by certain emotions, instincts, impulses to action or to an emotional state. Every time you open up a motivational video, you think that stuff is great, it feels really, really good, and you're more motivated to actually go and take action on the thing. Now, with all that being said, how can I go create that same type of effect for someone else? A lot of people use the analogy and say, okay, I'll just put motivational videos in front of them. Well, that's not necessarily the case. Let's go break down to the elements, the core fundamental elements of what motivates someone in the first place. Those people are motivated because they can see the purpose, the role that they play inside of that organization. So if I want to explain to someone how to motivate your organization, I might say something along the lines of, how do we find out what drives that person? And furthermore, what drives the collective team to go accomplish a goal? And we want to think about that from many different levels. How an individual is going to accomplish his or her goal, and then how the collective team is going to accomplish their goal to achieve the purpose, to achieve the task that you have set out to do for that team. Everyone has to be incentivized. If people aren't incentivized to do so, then there's no reason for them to do anything, and all the motivation goes away. So when I go about, say, for example, teaching how to motivate someone, I want to think down to those fundamental levels, those elements of how reality is constructed. A lot of people would say this is kind of like first principles thinking with relation to physics. Funny enough, this is how Elon Musk likes to go and deconstruct problems and put together solutions. He doesn't like to look at how everyone else does it. He tries to look down to what is it that makes something tick in the first place. He doesn't want to just look at, oh, there's an engine over here, so let's make an engine just like that. He wants to understand what makes an engine run, take it apart to its pieces, take those pieces and reconstruct it in a way that he finds to be more efficient. And you can find a lot of value in doing that. That's point number 2. Quick recap. Point number 1, understand you're talking to a human being. Second point is you want to look down to the elemental, fundamental level of how reality is constructed. And the third point, which, by the way, there's a lot that goes into this. This is pretty much why I teach other people how to communicate more effectively, how to speak in front of audiences, how to motivate their teams and manage them and incentivize them correctly. Point number 3, I'm going to give you an exercise. Okay? This exercise will be hashed out more thoroughly in a future video, but in this exercise, I'm going to teach you how to have that $1 million mouthpiece, how you could speak forever and ever and ever. And this is something I discovered by accident on one of my live programs. I had this idea of, free association with regards to not just speaking just random things, but rather speaking so that you could trip over your conscious state into a state of your subconscious access. Essentially what your brain is offering for you there. You can't come up with a new idea while holding another idea back. Set a timer. And if you want to make this easier for yourself, think about a question you want to have answered, such as how do I communicate more effectively, or how do I connect better with the purpose of my organization, or how do I negotiate for a raise, or how do I close more sales and earn more commission, or how do I achieve my company's goals more effectively. So just think of like a simple question. Just write that question down, okay? So you could actually visually see it. It's important that you could visually see it, or at the very least remember it, but it's easier if you can go see it. It actually saves up your brain's bandwidth. So write down the question. After you write down the question, set a timer for 5 minutes, okay? Actually, you can go as long as 15 or 30 minutes with regards to this, but I like to set a timer for 5 minutes just to get started. So you set a timer for 5 minutes, and in that 5-minute timer, you just start speaking, and you don't stop speaking. You just keep going and going and going and going and going and going and going, no matter what comes out, because we are going to get into a state where the flow of words starts coming out of your mouth very, very easily. And we want to get to that state of almost speaking consciousness. I don't even know if that's a real term, but get to a state of speaking consciousness so that we can allow words to spill out. And then when you decide to slow things down, now you can actually articulate your thoughts more clearly. So this is something that I've cultivated and I practice a lot, and it's a big reason why I'm able to sort of speak and speak and speak forever like this. So I'll give you an opportunity to do this. In fact, I will demonstrate it right now. In the next minute, I'm just going to free associate, okay? Maybe we'll discover something new together. So here's the exercise. So let's think of a question here. The question is, how do we get over self-sabotage? That's gonna be a future topic for a future video. So here it goes, 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, so we're talking right now, we're going and we're looking at the sunset, we're over here in Chicago, we're making things happen, and we're not gonna think about self-sabotage, but now we're thinking about self-sabotage, okay? What is self-sabotage? We gotta go back down to the elements, down to the elements, down to the elements, down to the elements. We have some green over here, grass over there, ground over there, and we're making things happen. The bikes are coming by, and the guy's looking at me and making comments on this, but we gotta think about the self-sabotage. People self-sabotage because they fear success. Fear of success, that's a really, really interesting concept. Why would some fear success? Because there's a lot more responsibility. People are motivated to maximize their outcome, minimize their energy expenditure, because energy expenditure means more stress, more work. We're not built for a modern time, we're built for an ancient time where we want to minimize energy expenditure. So maybe a big reason why people self-sabotage is because they do not want to have the responsibility that may or may not come with that success, and then all the added work that comes with it. So we have a potential answer. So you heard a lot of nonsense happen there from me, sort of just speaking a bunch of nonsense, honestly, repeating a lot of things, whatever strategy made sense for me. And what that allowed me to do is get to this place where, ideas can sort of spill out of my brain. And when they can spill out of my brain like that, now I'm in a place where I can actually stop overthinking and allow the ideas that I've already been cultivating from my years of experience, all the books you've ever read, all the videos I've ever watched, all the materials you ever consumed can come spilling out in a way that's very unique. And what's really cool about this is when you get to that place where you're really, really, really unsure about what's gonna happen next, that's when something really special happens, and that's when the beautiful idea comes out. If I didn't do this, maybe I would never discover that is how people go and self-sabotage. Maybe they fear success because they know it's going to be a lot more work, and with a lot more work and responsibility comes a lot more pain, comes a lot more stress, and maybe they get the abstraction of the result, like money, success, freedom, all that. They get to experience the emotional sensation of actually having to put in a lot more work, and maybe they may not be a fan of it or may not even be ready for it, and that's a big thing we talk about in our coaching. So those are 3 tools you can use right away just to learn how to articulate more effectively. Notice how a couple of these things don't have much to do with the actual speaking process. Maybe that third reason, but those first 2 reasons really tell you how much the listening side goes into the speaking process, having that emotional intelligence, being able to look down into the fabric of things, breaking down problems into their first principles and figuring out what are the real, sustainable, long-term motivators that you can examine people with and sort of build up from there, how to come to a solution and be able to trust in yourself to come to that answer utilizing that free association. So that's the topic for this week, effective communication. Hopefully you learned a couple of things new in terms of how to speak more clearly, and even discovered some new techniques to go and discover new information for yourself. Next week, we're going to answer another question from the chat box. This is a question on why we sabotage and how to fix it. We'll start off with what we picked up on from this video, and we'll build on it into the next video. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.